There were like 3 attempts for people to give me a nickname, and I just didn't.
I didn't. I've got several.
You have Narrowgate nicknames?
Not Narrowgate nicknames.
Oh, okay.
You have some Narrowgate nicknames too.
Oh, I do?
Yeah.
Whoa.
They're all really like. I've heard guys refer to you as Daddy Daddy.
Oh, that's Daddy Daddy.
Yes.
That's
my nickname for you was always my shrink. Yeah, because I had bought in fully to the idea that I was getting counseling, and I thought that it was like some big moment in my life. So I just laid into it.
And it was.
I'm seeing a shrink.
I mean, come on. This is a moment.
Hey. Welcome to the Narrowgate Podcast. I'm Weston.
And I'm Logan.
And this is the Thaddeus Heffner episode. Thaddeus is a licensed LMFT counselor. He practices here in the Nashville area. He has been a part of the Narrowgate family for a long time. He actually offers several slots pro bono to some of our guys here, and he's been doing that for a long time. Just a great guy. I really enjoyed this conversation with him.
I don't know why. I'll just say this way. It blessed me a lot more than I thought it would.
I totally forgot we were doing a podcast at one point.
Yeah.
It was just, we were in the room talking to a guy who knows a lot about how people work and why.
Well, my favorite thing about the podcast episode was we did a couple impressions of some lovable characters. I won't go into it now. You can check it out later.
That was actually really impressive.
That was really fun.
Yeah. You know, this episode is actually pretty special, I think, because Thaddeus and I have had a relationship for a long time. When I graduated Narrowgate, I was one of those guys that walked out with my head up and ready to tackle the world. And when I realized that I didn't quite have it all figured out, something wasn't yet figured out in me with my emotions, with my how that outward me works with the inward me.
Yeah.
And so I met with Thaddeus for like 2 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I mean, we're talking like every week. And dude, the growth that I experienced in that, just him helping me kind of figure out why I do the things that I do. I thought Narrowgate fixed that, and yet here I'm still doing these things that I struggled with before that's causing some pretty serious damage in my life. Why am I still doing that? And he helped me to kind of get to the bottom of, it's the same reason that everybody still struggles with things.
Yeah.
It's they're trying to get their needs met. And I didn't have a real good understanding of what those needs were. So this is a really, like I said, special episode for me.
And as always, if you want to learn more about Narrowgate Foundation, check out our show notes. Hope you enjoy the episode.
We start every episode by asking 2 questions. Who are you and why are you here? The reason that we ask those 2 questions is because they're kind of fundamental to Narrowgate. It's the thing that we say at every orientation. It's the thing that every graduate knows. And so it's kind of our way of allowing you to introduce yourself to us, to listeners. So who are you and why are you here?
Got it. Thank you. I'm Thaddeus Heffner. In my professional world, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist here in the greater Nashville area. Why am I here? A mutual friend of Bill and Stacy, Spencer, Maurice Carter, over 20 years ago now, about 20 years ago, introduced us. And Bill and Stacy and I met at what was then Borders Books up in Brentwood, Tennessee, and sat down and had coffee and a conversation and got to know each other. And now I'm here today. So I've just since then had a relationship with the Narrowgate family through the years. Years ago, when they were still at a deer run, they would every now and then they'd say, "Hey, could you come out and mentor one of our guys?" Which was, great privilege and honor. And then, and so in some form or fashion, I've always had a toe in the water at Narrowgate. So that's why, that's why I'm here today.
Yeah, it's always funny to ask those questions to people that I know who they are and why they're here, but to hear them introduce themselves is always kind of fun. You know, I think that for you really don't know who Thaddeus is.
No, I'm pleased to get to know you today.
Yeah,
So,
likewise.
I have a whole lot of experience with Thaddeus that goes back not just professionally over the last several years as he's worked with some of our students here at Narrowgate, but even as far back as when I was a student and graduated. I actually went and met with Thaddeus, had sessions, for probably like 2 or 3 years.
Which I can neither confirm nor deny.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, totally. But it was once I finally swallowed my pride and decided that, I probably need some counseling. I started meeting with him, and I would not be who I am if it hadn't been for that time with you. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm like so tempted to just like test the waters and be like, so what y'all talking about? Like just to see if he's really professional, but I think I get the picture. So.
I can give you in a nutshell. It was
you don't have to. Okay.
Me not good with emotions.
Yeah.
Him helping me get better with emotions.
It's awesome. Is there any kind of like specific area that you, I don't know, whether you excel at or consider yourself a specialist in, any specific topics along mental health that you find yourself dealing with more often or more effectively?
Yeah, I don't know that I would say specialist, but many therapists will often find something or a couple of things they really enjoy doing, and they focus on that. So while I'm a marriage and family therapist, I no longer see couples. I haven't for about 8 years. I just really enjoy doing individual work, and sometimes I've run some groups as well, which I enjoy. But mostly individuals. I work mostly with men. Occasionally I'll see women. Usually if I'm working with women, it's to work on trauma. I do a mode of therapy called EMDR therapy, which is a trauma-based therapy. I use EMDR a lot, regardless who I'm seeing. But I would say mostly I focus on men with any number of issues that they're coming to see me for. There's a whole umbrella of issues. I've worked a lot with identity issues as well in men. That could be, just personal identity. Who am I in this world? Sometimes it's been sexual identity. Often it's been that. That's on the forefront of what's in the culture right now. So but whomever I'm working with or whatever they're bringing, I'm always trying to honor the client and follow the client. That's my main role, is to try to help them get where they're going. Yeah.
I think that makes sense as to why Narrowgate and Thaddeus are so connected and unified, because you're the same mission as us. Identity. Who are you? Not who does the world want you to be, or who do you think you should be because of the people that you're around or the stories you've been told or the experiences you've had, but like, who are you? And that's exactly what we specialize in. Yeah. So that makes sense to me as to why there's a connection there.
Yeah. And so for this question, it's not to be too general, but like, when did you kind of discover who you were as a person, or perhaps, what would bring you into this field that you're in now?
Yeah. A lot of my own personal journey has been around identity and masculinity and manhood. And that could be a whole box of, opened up right there with our particular culture right now. But for me and my story, I grew up in a family of 9 children. I'm one of 9. I have 4 older brothers. And I remember always looking at them as they became young adults, thinking, oh, they're a man, and someday I'll be that. And someday came, or someday never came, actually. And I was always questioning that and questioning, who am I as a man? What does that even mean? And you'd be surprised, side note, how many times I get that question over the last almost 15 years now in my office. But that was what I was asking. And it was very important to me. And believe it or not, I was 27 years old, still wrestling with that question. And I woke up on my 27th birthday, and before my feet hit the floor, I prayed, and I just said, I don't know what a man is, but I declare myself one today, and I will not stop until I understand what that means for me.
Wow.
And then I went and started meeting with a therapist for the first time ever, and which was extremely helpful. And what she did was she took my lenses, she took my glasses, cleaned them for me, and I put them back on. And I was like, oh, this is what the world actually looks like. So I had a lot of bad ideas and bad views of self and others. And somewhere within a few years after that, I was in this men's prayer group on a Saturday morning. I actually used to meet at Christ Church, and they've moved around through the years. It was an extremely healing time for me. And I really believe those men helped brother me and father me in many ways. And I had a great father, and I have great brothers. But I was getting things that I feel like I was deficient in. And then not too long after that, one of those Saturday mornings, I heard the Lord say, just in my spirit, I felt a peace come over me. And I heard the Lord say, I will make you a fisher of men. And you know what that means. It will mean souls. But for you, it will mean you will bring men into healthy masculinity. And I was immediately excited because it had been a while since I had heard that way. It had been about 10 years in my spirit, that is. And I was also scared because I knew there would be a cost. But I was more excited than scared, and this may be too long of an answer for y'all.
Good. This is great.
This is really long.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
We're happy to hear it, man.
This is a podcast, so you can talk as long as you want.
Thank you. Well, I walked up to one of the men, Jason, and I whispered in his ear. We were all kind of spread out through the sanctuary praying individually, which we had never done. They asked us to do that day. And then we were going to come together corporately and pray. And so I whispered in Jason's ear, I think I just heard from the Lord, and this is what he said. And he said, okay. And then moments later, another man, Steve, said, hey guys, let's come together. We're going to pray now corporately. Let's gather. So we all gather, and he said, hey, but before we start, I have a word for one man, and I don't know who it is. But when I left the house this morning, the Lord said, well, let me back up. What the Lord said to me was, I'll make you a fisher of men, but I'm changing the meaning of this for you. It will always mean souls, but for you, it will now mean this as well. And so then Steve says, the Lord is saying to somebody in here, he is changing the meaning of something for you. It will still mean what he didn't know what the verse was. God didn't give him that, but he specifically said, God's changing the meaning of something for you. And then Jason turns to me and says, that's what you just told me, like not 2 minutes ago. So it was word, witness, confirmation, all within probably 3 minutes.
Wow.
And then, I was a much younger Thaddeus back then. And I thought, okay, God, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And then I calmed down after about 3 weeks. And I was like, why don't I just let you steer? And so that's kind of, several years went by and I decided to go back to grad school. And that's the boring part of the story. 2 years of studying and tests.
Your classes.
Yeah. Well, what's something that you would say has evolved or maybe even changed from now Thaddeus to early Thaddeus in your carrying out that mission?
Yeah. Well, over the past almost 20 years now, since I heard that, I've had the opportunity, not just through being a therapist and working with men of all ages, but I volunteer with a couple of organizations where I go and I'm volunteer staff and I help lead some retreats, intensives, and of all ages. And so I've seen the fruit of what I received 20 years ago. And 20 years ago when that happened, I wasn't just excited and scared at the same time. It was laughable. Are you sure you have the right guy here? Because this is what I've been struggling with, and you're telling me this is what I'm going to do. So it was, to me, hilarious. But that is, in my judgment, the economy of God, right? It's the upside down, backward. The first shall be last. In our weakness, he is strong, and he's going to send somebody who struggles with masculinity to invite men into that world, into deeper places. So I would say I'm much more calm. I'm much more secure in who I am as a man. There came a day several years into that journey where I stopped asking that question, what is a man? I literally asked it every day. And even after I declared myself that, I would still ask the question. And then one day I realized I wasn't asking that question anymore. And then just the more I've gotten to work with men, and some of the things men have said to me after working with them, not just as a therapist, but on some of these retreats, is really mind-blowing. That one, I get to participate in other souls, with other souls, and just some of the affirming things I have heard reflected back to me. And I think that's just deepened my understanding of self and God and men in general. So
yeah, that's cool. Have you ever had counseling?
Oh yeah, actually, it was a Christian counselor in Abilene, Texas, who was the first one who ever mentioned Narrowgate to me,
Wow.
and then said, "Yeah, you've got a friend from your high school who went there. You should go talk to him." And that was Jace Beard. Was the student. But yeah, I mean, it was, I had seen that counselor off and on a little bit through high school, and also after, kind of in pursuing some healing after that season of wandering. I was one of those graduates who kind of, I mean, a couple months after, I mean, just had an experience of, walking through some failure and just experienced a lot of shame and like turned tail and ran. I mean, ran from Tennessee, ran from the Lord. And it was that exact same Christian counselor that I saw. Actually, when God was kind of sorting things out in that season, I sought him out to just kind of process some things with. So again, Yeah,
I feel like there's kind of two categories of people and how they view counseling and therapy. And like, you've got the people that live and die by it. And then you've got the people that are like, nope, I don't need any of that psycho babble, and I say that because I was probably one of them, like not antagonistic against counseling or therapists, I was probably more of the attitude, like, if that's what you need, then go for it. I don't really need it, and then I woke up, I think, and realized like, no, I'm actually really messed up. I probably could use some help from somebody who at least knows how to draw some of these things out. And so, Thaddeus was the first counselor that I actually saw. And so is there is there anything that you would say to somebody who's maybe coming to you as a counselor, as a therapist, with some of that, hesitation or apprehension about counseling in general?
Sure. What I try to communicate to people in my office is that I'm trying to follow you. And really, this is going to sound very Yoda, but you have everything inside of you that you need.
I love Yoda.
Right, exactly. Right.
Just say it.
Right.
Luminous beings we are, not this crude matter.
Bro, you can preach that. I'm just saying. All right, sorry. Back.
I don't do Yoda, but I do a pretty mean Gollum. So
We could just do this for an hour, and that'd be an episode.
Stupid fat hobbit.
Yes.
Oh, that's so
Yes, you have to
good.
answer all. We have to do all the questions and voices now. Okay.
That's like the same voice. It's not even an impression. That might actually be him.
This is the best.
Yes.
Okay, what was
my
I'm
sidekick.
sorry I interrupted your answer.
what
It was
I say
so
to
good.
guys that are considering therapy or counseling but aren't so sure about it is that, granted, some people are coming in with much bigger and deeper issues that certainly might take time or deeper modes of therapy, right? But for the most part, what I'm really trying to do is get a person to, as part of the work, is to raise their self-awareness, listen to themselves. It's not, in my judgment, it's not unlike Jesus going off to meditate and pray and get quiet. And I'm inviting men to get quiet, really know yourself, to feel your emotions, and just stop trying to think your way out of everything. I think most people, that's a broad brushstroke. A lot of people try to think our way out of things, But God made us body, soul, and spirit. He gave us emotion. He created emotions to express, not to suppress. And he gave us body sensations and impulses. And these other areas also inform us, not just our minds. And Jesus felt every emotion and expressed it, turned over tables, laughed, wept at the tomb of Lazarus, felt anguish in the garden. And usually when we let all four of those areas, thoughts, body sensations, emotions, and impulse work in concert, it raises our understanding about what's going on. So that's very basic, but it's very rare someone walks through my door that is in touch with their emotions or feelings. And so, it's just think of it like you're going to a gym, but rather than working out your muscles, you're working out your emotional body, your emotional muscles that have often atrophied, So.
Why are more people not either educated or aware of how to be in touch with their emotions? Like, why do you think that so many people are? Because I know that's why I walked into your door. Well, I didn't know that was why at the time, but that was why.
Yeah, is there something in the culture that you've seen change? I mean, over the years. I mean, obviously that we're living in now that kind of produces that in people, or is it purely something spiritual? I mean, what?
I don't know that it's changed. I think for generations now, we're taught not to feel. Sometimes it's very direct, like, don't you, your feelings are shut down. I've had clients where if you expressed emotion in the household, it was unsafe to do so. So they learn not to feel. But others, sometimes it's given to us indirectly through family, through peers. Don't cry or I'll give you something to cry about.
Oh, dang it.
Or you think about hearing that as a boy.
Convicted now?
Well, I've literally said that.
We both have small children right now. And as you started answering this, I'm like, oh no, I have been so short with my kids lately. And even something as small as like, Daddy, I don't want to go upstairs. I'm scared of being up there. I'm like, and my initial response was not acknowledging his fear. It was, that's so stupid.
Yeah.
It's only us here. You were up there playing 3 hours by yourself. I mean,
how old?
I've got a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old and an 11-month-old, but like that 5 and 4-year-old, I mean, I've been so convicted just in the last few days. Of like, dude, I have
more
shut
coming.
them down.
Imagine more conviction.
I'm here to
coming.
learn, man. Bring it on. Let's go.
Yeah. So, I mean, in that example, you're not intentionally trying to do damage to your child. But when we hear that enough, it's just very indirect. Sometimes we take these messages growing up, especially boys, don't cry. What are you, a sissy? Are you scared? Even from our peers. And so we put on, we build a wall basically, and it becomes our resiliency. And that wall can take on many forms, things we medicate with, or just silence, even in isolation. So we become these adults that don't feel and don't emote, when we swallow everything. And then we wonder why we have sometimes addictions, but it doesn't have to be full-blown addiction. It could also be what I call avoidance mechanisms or distractions. When I bring up avoidance mechanisms in my office, or even addictions, I really want I'm inviting men and women to see these as, let them be your teacher, not your shame. Oh, I want to go overeat again. I want to go, it's 11 o'clock and my head's in the refrigerator or the pantry. Maybe if instead see that as a road sign saying, oh, there's probably something I'm feeling that I need to get in touch with, that I'm trying to avoid by eating my stress, stress eating or whatever.
Everything there's a spectrum, right? There's a pendulum that swings that you can, if you're too far in one direction, right? Like shutting down people's ability to work through their emotions. If that's that sort of aggressive, stifling of that would be this end of the pendulum. The other end of the pendulum to me would be accommodating or making the emotional state or the emotions that you feel the most important thing.
Right.
And I feel like that would have consequences too.
Yes.
Could you help me or help us, unless you've got it all figured out?
I'm in on that.
Could you?
No, he's still shaking his
Could you help us to figure out, one, what that other side of the pendulum looks like, in life, what it looks like. And then where is the balance? Where is the appropriate,
Yeah. And that can be different for different people too, and where they're at in life.
Well, let's phrase it to me when I try to, I want my son to be tough, but I don't want him to be, unable to, I don't want him to be where I was at, unable to deal with emotions.
Right. So unhealthy is stuff your emotions. That would be one side of the pendulum. The other side is all I do is let my emotions dictate my life. And feelings and emotions are important, but and feelings, we feel emotions, but not every feeling is an emotion, right? So sometimes I've heard people say, but it feels true. And I'll say, well, just because it feels true doesn't mean it is true. Right.
Truth is not an emotion.
Truth, right. Truth is truth. So, wow, that was profound, wasn't it? Truth is truth.
Cut, print, we're done.
So it's, how do we learn to, and there is balance. How do we learn to express emotion in healthy ways? But if all we're ever doing is potentially becoming a victim of our emotions, right? So, that's perhaps where needs come in. We all have needs of each other. So let's use you and your son as the example. A need might be affirmation. And so your son emotes, he's sad about something, let's say he cries, and you sit there with him in it. And that's you honoring him and showing him it's okay, men cry. And then also saying, I am so proud of you for, being honest with where you're at. But then, there may be a follow-up, and you know what, you can do this. So I know you're sad about it, but you've got this, and so it may add that, it may keep them from going way to the other side if we just leave them in their emotions. And there's a lot of evidence of that in our culture as well. So I think the more we raise our awareness is how we eventually find the center. Yeah. It'll balance out. That pendulum will slow and center.
Yeah. I heard a good quote one time that emotions are like 4 or 5-year-olds. Yeah. That they can bring you joy. They can, make your life full of meaning and purpose, and you can enjoy them, but don't let them drive your car.
Yeah. Kay Farrow and Joel Farrow, I think we all know them. She used to, because I had some sessions with her over the years, and she would tell me, emotions are like 4-year-olds. If you ignore a 4-year-old, like if I was to neglect my 4-year-old son, he would die.
Right.
And yet I don't let him decide what we do with our finances, what we do with our time. I mean, we don't let him drive the ship. And so, there's got to be balance with that. I see that. And of course we've mentioned, probably one of the, I get your opinion on this too. Probably the one that men struggle with the most is probably that you're not allowed to show that type of sensitive emotion. Like you're not allowed to cry.
Right.
I think in my family though, I think it was a little bit different because goodness gracious, anybody who knows my dad, Rod Pringle, it doesn't matter if it's like a family holiday. It could just be any family gathering where we have gathered with the family for a meal, extended family. He's going to pray for the meal, and he's going to halfway through, he's crying.
Yeah.
So like I grew up with that, like this like that, like that's okay, that's good, that's right, that's normal. And I think in our family it was, if you show frustration, if you show anger, like, whoa, you got to squash that.
Like that's a bad emotion.
That's a bad emotion.
Right. And so I would say there are no such thing as good emotions or bad emotions. Emotions just are. And if anger is a bad emotion, then God is to blame because he created it. And if anger is a bad emotion, then Jesus was sinning when he flipped over tables, right?
Yeah.
But
which obviously isn't the case.
It's not the case. Right. Absolutely not the case. And rage and anger are two different things. Rage is fear-based. When we suppress fear rather than go into fear, it turns into anxiety. And then we're so anxious, we need to try to get control back. And as we're trying to get it back, we might rage to get the control back. That's not healthy. But healthy anger is passionate and it sets boundaries. Right. And so think about what Jesus did there. Jesus, he went to the temple courts. I forget which gospel it is, perhaps Mark. One of the gospels actually reads that I'm pretty sure I remember this. I'm remembering this correctly. It reads that Jesus went to the temple courts near the end of the day, and there weren't a lot of people around. So he left and came back in the morning. That's, I believe, only in one of the Gospels, and I had missed it till a few years ago. And I thought, oh my goodness, I've never seen that. Because think about that. He wanted a full house.
Yeah.
He was being very intentional. And so he went back, and then he fashioned a whip. That takes time.
Yeah.
That's not rage. And then he flipped over tables and drove them out. And he had a very clear message. My house shall be a house of prayer. You have turned it into a den of thieves. Get out. Boundary setting. So anger came out in a very healthy way, and he drove out those that were the wrongdoers, and he set a new boundary. And that's healthy anger. So anger is a very healthy emotion. Now, we can express it in unhealthy ways, but the emotion itself, that's not its fault. That's our fault, right? So
Yeah. Do
Be
you?
angry and do not sin.
Yeah, exactly.
yes, be angry and sin.
Do
not.
you
Yeah.
have any time that this topic comes up, either in conversation or even in my mind, like anger has there are so many examples of poorly expressed anger. The one example that I have for positively expressed anger is Jesus in the Bible.
Right.
But can you give an example or a picture of an example of what healthy anger expressed might look like?
Anger doesn't have to be turning over tables. It can be very direct, clear language. Let's say, Weston, let's say you and I are in our 20s and we're housemates, and you work third shift and I work first shift, whatever our respective jobs are. And your car breaks down. It's got to go in the shop for a week. And you say to me, hey, since I work third shift, can I borrow your car? And I'll have it back before you go to work in the morning. And I'll say, sure, but just remember, I want you to park it in the driveway. Do not park it in the street under that tree that drips the sap, because I just had it detailed, blah, blah, blah. Sure, Thad, no problem. And then I get up the first morning after you've gotten home, gone to bed, and where's my car parked? Under the tree in the street, and there's sap all over the hood now. So I say to you, Weston, I'm very angry with you because what did you had one job, and what was it? Oh, Thad, I'm so sorry. It won't happen again. You're right. It won't happen again. Because I'm thinking of not letting you use my car. There's the consequence, right? So I let you use it one more time, and the same thing happens. So the message you're sending me is you do not respect or take care of my things when I'm trying to help you out. So I'm angry, and I just say, hey, Weston, there's no 3 strikes here. You get 2 tries here, 2 strikes. I'm angry with you. I want you to have my car detailed again, and you can't use it now. You just had one job. It was so simple. And I need you to know I'm really angry with you, and I don't trust you. I didn't blow up.
Yeah.
I didn't pop you in the face. I didn't cuss you out. So that is healthy anger. Another tool, I know of a teacher that had a student that would get very angsty, elementary school. They filled up water balloons and took them outside when that would happen. And here's a water balloon. I want you to get in touch with that anger and angst and throw it as hard as you can into the ground. And the kid did. After 3 or 4 water balloons, he was ready to go back inside. It's moving energy. And any emotion fully felt typically will it's designed to resolve to the next place. And so anger, once it's resolved in a healthy way, key being the healthy way, sometimes it'll make us feel powerful and strong, or we'll come to a place of peace when we get it out. If you've ever had a really good cry, how do you feel when you're done with the cry? Any takers? Anyone want to answer that question?
I probably could.
It
Definitely is a Logan question.
How do you feel after
I feel
a cry?
put on the spot. I feel like I had a couple.
Don't
of
answer
weeks.
wrong.
I had a couple weeks where I was feeling low, and I was sad about some things genuinely, and for like a week straight, I was like, man, I feel that like knife edge of like I could just cry any second, all throughout my day, like tears welling up at random things. And it's really interesting. I had I had a sit down with my boss, and man, I was just able to just tell him in a really safe space, dude, I've just been sad, and I had a prideful response to this, and I'm just sad about this and this and this. And yeah, the emotion definitely came out.
And how did you feel when you were done?
A sense of peace and obviously, it's that sense of peace. But when something's I feel like when something's pent up for that long, it can almost feel exhausting. To get it out.
Yes. So often when people have a good cry or get their sadness out, however it comes out, they feel peace, relief. They're ready for a nap. There's the exhausting. Because you just released. So any emotion fully felt tends to release to the next place, which is a good place. And it will just naturally happen. That's how God designed it. It's when we suppress it that it's going to fester and rot and demand to be honored. And it's going to come out sideways somehow. I don't know how you had asked originally, how do you deal with anger? So there are clean ways to do it, and there are healthy ways. I'll use an example here. One time we were doing group work. I was just taking the guys through some stuff. And near the end, I usually take a little bit more time to set something like this up. But I said, hey, we only have a little bit of time left. And anybody here dealing with a lot of anger? And like 4 guys stepped out, and I threw I had brought a punching bag with me, one that you would hang. So I just laid it on the ground, put a pillow down for their knees because I had them kneel down, and then gave them a bat and gave them some safety measures. And I said, when you are ready, with intention, get in touch with the anger. When you're ready, put it into the bag. And all 4 did, and probably spent maybe a minute or a little more with each man. But I would stop them after they're beating this bag and yelling. And then I'd say, okay, stop. Check in with your body. And they would express like, yeah, I'm tight. I'm angry. I feel it in my chest. And then they'd beat the bag. And then they'd say, I'm feeling lighter. I'm feeling some peace. And then I think there was one man who just had so much. He felt lighter, but he said, there's still more to do. I'm like, okay, we'll get to it. But so that took all of a minute, and it was safe. And even when we were done, I said, hey, was anybody hurt today? I asked the whole group, was anybody hurt today doing this? Was this done in an unsafe way? I was trying to teach them, there are ways to get your anger out in healthy, safe ways and move that into a relief and peace. So that's another example.
I remember that vividly. I had to buy a punching bag.
You went out and bought a punching bag. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need this around here.
Yeah. This is a great thing. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. But would you agree that different people have different emotional capacities, and that there isn't like one right way or one right amount of emotion to feel? So some people, have a broader, emotional spectrum, and some people have a more narrower one. So like while we were talking earlier, the reason I'm asking this question is while we were talking earlier, I don't like remember the last time specifically that I had like a big cry, and it's not that, I haven't before. I obviously have, but like even that question, like how did you feel after the last time you cried? Like it would take me, I'd have to go back a long ways. Yeah. And so if I were less secure in myself, I might think, oh, well, is there something wrong with me because I don't cry very much, Like I like to think that I'm at least better than I was, at one former point in my life with handling emotions and emotional awareness and expressing those. But I still don't cry easily,
Yeah, everybody's different. Just like we have different personality types. We have, introverts, extroverts, ambiverts. It's the same for emotions.
Family origin stuff play into that a whole lot, or is it really?
I'm sure it does. If we were taught it's okay to express versus not, but there are many ways to feel sadness. Mm-hmm. Crying is one expression of it. So I know.
I was asking for the listeners,
sure.
not me. No.
I have guys in my office all the time where I just say, "Hey," and they'll say, "I feel sad." I'm like, "Okay, well, just be open to whatever it wants to do. It doesn't have to be tears. It can just be." And they'll say, "Yeah, I just feel heavy." Okay, just feel the heaviness then,
So you do this for a living.
Yeah.
And you are interacting with people who are feeling a lot or feeling, a lot and don't know how to express it. And I'm sure that engages your emotions at some point in this. How do you deal with that? I mean, I know that in ministry, it's hard to deal with people's junk, but when you're paid for people to bring it to you and set it in your lap, how do you set boundaries for yourself? How do you deal with that in times where you're, how do you deal with that? That's the question.
Really similar. I'm curious about that too.
To be quite honest, I've never had an issue with holding the space for people like that. I won't say never. Most of the time, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't take anything home with me. I've never have from day one. I don't know why that is.
Sounds like the grace of God.
Yes. Yeah, that would be it. That would be right. The only times I've ever taken something home is if it were something very intense. Like this has happened maybe 2 or 3 times. Like somebody was suicidal and, I had to call a parent or somebody we needed to get them to a safer place. And then I was like, please call me because I'm not going to sleep tonight, or one time I had to call DCS years ago about something and my stomach was in knots. I take that stuff home. But I try to hold space for people and let their sadness or their anger or their fear or their anxiety be theirs. There are times where I'm moved to the degree where, because it probably touches something similar in me that I've experienced in life, loss or what have you. And so I might tear up some, and that can sometimes even be very affirming to grieve with somebody. So that's happened from time to time, but it's more in the moment. I don't usually carry stuff out with me. Yeah.
I wanted to kind of ask about, I feel like in recent years, the conversation just around counseling and therapy, it's maybe increased in the culture a little bit, like even to the point where I'm getting ads for it on my phone, on like streaming services and stuff like that. But do you feel there's still like a stigma among men specifically that are resistant to meeting with somebody?
I think there can be. Yeah. I think I don't see it as much today, but I still do see it.
Yeah, I'm almost thinking like from the perspective of, if we have like a graduate, who's listening now, who like they know they should probably talk to somebody. They should probably open up to somebody. They're resisting something or holding on to stuff. Like, what would you encourage them with to kind of get them to find that safe space?
Well, first I would encourage them to talk to a couple of people they know and trust. I didn't just go look for a therapist myself. I went to my pastor at the time and I said, I need to go some places that you can't take me, but I trust that you can send me to somebody who can. And he said, you're right, I can't take you there, but I've got someone just for you, right? And she was amazing, and she was exactly what I needed. So one, ask a few people you trust to see if they can help you, or if a guy who's considering it knows a few friends, close friends or family that have seen a therapist or a counselor, then talk to them and say, what was that like for you? Get some feedback. And then get several referrals. And, reach out to each of those referrals, talk to each of those referrals on the phone, get a feel for them, ask them, hey, do you do a first meeting? Different counselors do it different ways. I usually just do it all in the intake, but I'll do a lengthy phone call first, just to answer any questions I can and to give them as much information as possible. And realize that you can sit down with somebody and they're a bad fit, and that's okay. Just say, hey, I don't think this is a good fit. You can even ask that person, because it's our job ethically. If I'm not a good fit, and I tell people this in my intake, if I'm not a good fit, or you feel like I'm just not the good fit, or there's some other things they need to do that it's not in my wheelhouse, then it's my job to try to help them find someone. I don't have to. I just give them referrals if I do a little bit of work, if it's something more specific. But so just know it can be it can be a searching process. You don't have to go sit with the first person you meet, and if they're, God forbid, terrible, like, don't let that be the face of therapy. Because not everybody, not everybody's good at it, but also every therapist or counselor, we make mistakes. We're not perfect, and sometimes things are misinterpreted. Or
what would you say is like your philosophy, if you will, and your method or system when somebody comes in with some of those identity issues, not knowing who they are or thinking they are someone that maybe you disagree with? Like, what's sort of some of the tools or the methods, or how do you approach those conversations? Like, could you like walk through like sort of how you go about that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't approach them any differently because, regardless of presenting issue, we're all humans with emotions and feelings and thoughts and impulses and families of origin and storylines, and victories and pain and hurt. So, I'm letting a man tell their story, and if they're willing to look at it, we try to leave no stone unturned. Often when it comes to topics around sexuality or sexual identity, people, I don't know so much today, but I would say maybe 10 years ago, I'm going to say the church, if that's okay to say, I experienced some in the church that would say, no, we need to flee. We need to run that. And I'm like, no, we need to look at it. We need to understand it, because this person has questions about it. And they have questions about themselves. And so, really, I'm trying to get people, hey, let's put this all out on the table, whatever they're comfortable with. I always want to honor what they're comfortable with. And often they, regardless of the presenting issue, again, there can be nuance, of course, but regardless of the presenting issue, I don't do much different therapeutically with people. For instance, if I had a man who was struggling with lusting after women and a man who's struggling with lusting after men, I'm not doing anything different. And if the man who was struggling with lust with women, if he was to list out all of his proclivities and hurts and wounds and how it showed up in his life, and the man who lusted after men were to do the same thing, but we were to cover up which was which, put, each man's name at the top, but cover up their names, you would be probably hard pressed to tell me which man was which. Because it's what I'm trying to do, regardless of what somebody's presenting with, is get underneath it and deal with what's going on underneath, which usually changes the manifestation of whatever it is someone's presenting with, around identity or not. It can be anything. So does that help answer the question?
That's a great, great
absolutely.
answer. How would you answer the question, how do I know if I need therapy?
That's a good question. How would I answer that?
I'm just trying to think about anybody that might be wondering if they needed it or if it would be a good idea.
You probably do.
Yeah, well, that could be part of the answer. I mean, if I'm a person of faith, I might talk to the Lord about that. I might ask I would definitely run it by a person or two that I trust. Hey, I'm considering this. Do you have any thoughts? Please be honest with me. And then if they're honest and I'm like, how dare you say that I probably need therapy if I jump down their throat, right?
Yeah.
But I would think about it, pray about it, check with a few trusted people. And you know what? Go do it. And you might get 2 or 3 sessions in and realize, I don't need therapy, right? Even that's happened on occasion where I've had someone and I'm like, I'm really not sure why you're here, or one person years ago, this guy came in to check. He that's kind of what he was doing. He said, yeah, this happened and this happened, very traumatic things. And I think I'm okay, but I just wanted to check. And I spent maybe a month or 2 with him. And I said, look, we've gone through everything. We even did some EMDR. And I said, if you start seeing any things coming up in your life that are questionable or you're concerned, then come on back, call me. My door's always open. But So all that to say, go try it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you might find that you do need it, and you might find that you don't.
Well, what sorts of things cause you to say, I don't really think that you need this versus, yeah, I think that you should come back next week? Like, what are generally?
Is it like a level of self-awareness that you see in somebody that you're like, yeah, I think you're good, or
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. Sometimes it's their goals. If they had very specific goals and we have reached those, I'll say, hey, you have done everything you've set out to do. And unless, sometimes new goals will appear. So I'll just check, is there anything else you wanted to work on? Otherwise, I think we're kind of done, or you seem like if they didn't have a very specific goals, but it feels like we've kind of accomplished everything and they've just been in a good place. They're either done or they'll say, hey, well, could we do at least once a month just for a few months to make sure, sure. And then they can always come in a year, they can always come back if they want to. I feel like there was a second part to that question, but I don't remember.
no, I was just peppering it up a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know. I do
doing your
that.
thing.
At least 2 or 3 times you've mentioned EMDR, and 2 or 3 times Weston has played it off like he knew exactly what that was.
At some point, I was going to be like, what is that?
Yeah, it's all Weston is the one who definitely doesn't know what that means.
Yeah.
No,
I've heard it. It's used a lot, and I've heard that
term
it's
before,
been really
but I
helpful
actually don't
for
know what the
people.
definition is.
I don't know what it stands for. I don't know what it's purposed for.
Let me see if I can remember the story behind it, the training wise. The theorist that discovered it, I believe her name is Frances Shapiro. I trained in EMDR back in 2012, level 1 and 2. There's different levels, but it stands for eye movement desensitization process reprocessing. Yeah, there's an R there.
Eye movement desensitization.
Desensitization. That's why we just call it EMDR.
Makes
I
sense.
see.
Basically, in short, what I tell people is that every living second, our 5 senses are taking in bits of information. Right now, we're having a conversation. Our senses are taking in how the furniture feels beneath us, the lighting in the room, the conversation, the words we're using, the temperature in the room. So all of that information is coming in through the 5 senses. It's going to the brain, and the right and the left hemispheres of the brain are having a conversation about all this data. Once it's done processing it, it sits in the frontal lobe as memory. Done. When something traumatic happens, big T trauma, I like to say that God put a circuit breaker in the brain. And when the senses take in a trauma, it can be so overwhelming that the brain stops talking about it. But all the data is still coming in. It doesn't have a place. It's not being processed, so it doesn't go to the frontal lobe. Instead, it moves to the limbic region of the brain, the nervous system, and it gets frozen in the nervous system. And that's why someone can have an anxiety attack. They can be in the safest room in the world with loved ones and suddenly have a panic attack, and they don't even know why, but it could have been a scent or a smell or a sound, and it hit that limbic region and triggered the trauma.
Without necessarily triggering a memory or a reason.
Right, exactly. And so what EMDR does is it focuses on the trauma, and it allows a person to specifically focus on a trauma to bring it back up. So you're intentionally trying to tap into the emotions and what happened, the memory, and then you apply eye movement, eye movement. There are 3 ways that I know to do it. It was discovered through eye movement. It's recreating REM sleep, right? When our eyes move back and forth. You can do it through touch. They have nifty tools now. It started with follow my fingers or tapping somebody's knees or the backs of their hands, and then also audio. But now there's light bars, and you just follow the light bar with your eyes back and forth, or there's vibrating pads you hold, and this one will vibrate left, right. And that's telling the brain to talk. It's a brain hack is what I call it. It's just telling the right and left hemispheres of the brain to discuss and process what we're bringing back up. So it's unfreezing, if you will, what got frozen in the nervous system, thawing it out and finishing the conversation and then all the emotion that came with it. And it finishes processing and moves to the frontal lobe, and now it's memory.
That's fascinating.
And that that works. Obviously,
Yeah,
it's popular.
Yes, when it was discovered and put into a mode of therapy, a construct, one of the first places that Shapiro took it to, if I'm remembering correctly, were veterans hospitals. Mm-hmm. And they were seeing, they were having a lot of trouble with PTSD, and nothing, very few things were helping. And this just started to help men and women that were veterans. I've not been back for a training in some time, but when I trained, it had an 80 to 85% success rate, which is really high for a therapeutic construct. So, yeah.
I feel like that we could just keep going with this conversation because it feels so beneficial just to me personally. I'm fighting the urge to just keep asking questions about my emotions and how to deal with them.
We just slowly turn this into our
therapy
session.
Yes.
We're not going to tell anyone it's happening. We're just going to start talking.
We'll just cut the cameras and let's just have like a full-on session. But
I follow that sentiment exactly. I'm fascinated. I mean, by talking about this, obviously. But yeah, if there's like one thing that you could encourage or challenge our Narrowgate grads with. Those who've gone on, again, we've got some who are 18, 19, those who are in their 30s and 40s.
Several that you've met with?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there like one thing that you'd like to?
Yes.
Yeah. I love it. He's like prepared. Nobody comes in prepared for that one.
Because I tell this to everybody, even to Narrowgate guys all the time. Need fulfillment and emotions. Need fulfillment and emotions. Let yourself be open. The body knows where to go. Trust it. And need fulfillment, community. What I love about Narrowgate, there's many things I love, but what I love is I tell guys, hey, you're in an incubator for about 8 months. Yeah. You have a built-in community. You spend day in and day out with your classmates, that become friends and brothers and staff. You share a bunkhouse, you eat meal, you break bread, you pray, you study, you hike, you do all these things. You go out into the community, and then you graduate and you go back to Texas or New Zealand or Franklin, Tennessee, and guys go overnight from community to no community. Mm-hmm. And suddenly proclivities start creeping up again in their lives. And they're like, why is this happening? I'm like, well, where's your community? It wasn't just because I came to Narrowgate and I didn't have television and I didn't have my phone. It's not just because of that. Community and need fulfillment are what fill us. And when we do not have healthy need fulfillment, men have needs of other men. Women have needs of other women. I tell couples, even though I don't do couples work, I work with lots of married men, and I'll say, hey, you will always need a few safe men in your life. She will always need a few safe women in her life, because there are going to be some things a wife does not get about a husband, and there are going to be some things he doesn't get about a wife. But there are going to be some things men will get about you that she won't, and women will get, I have a friend who used to kick his wife out once a week after they had their first two little, like a newborn and a toddler. And he's just like, you need go be with your girlfriends. Just get out of the house. I've got it, because he knew she needed that. Not just a break from the children, but to be with safe women. So community and need fulfillment are huge. Really, I'll try to make this quick. Even during COVID, when the shutdown started, they said 2 weeks, right, to flatten the curve. And then 2 became 3 and 3 became 4. And I knew after the 4th week, I just thought, okay, I'm going to start having men come in and say, what's going on? I'm struggling with this again. I've been sober for however long, and this is coming back up. And within that second month, and definitely into the third, I probably had 6 to 10 guys come in and say, Thad, what is going on? I've been 6 months sober and now this. And I'm like, don't worry, you're okay. I fully expected this to happen, because you built safe community of men in your life. You've been getting your needs fulfilled in healthy ways, which means now I don't have to go to those unhealthy ways of medicating because I'm lonely and sad and hurting. And the government just came in and said, no community for you, 2 years, right? Yeah. Like the soup Nazi. And suddenly all their need fulfillment just went out the window. So
just-
sorry if you don't know what that is.
No,
can listen
in the
for you.
context of COVID, it's just making me
Sorry,
giggle.
I was reaching back
Oh,
to
you were doing so good, and I derailed it.
1990s. That was Seinfeld's. If you're not aware of that, listeners. So suddenly, they're not getting their needs fulfilled in healthy, safe ways with trusted friends and brothers or women, whomever it is. And so that's what I would say. With Narrowgate especially, because again, it's overnight. If they don't have safe community they're going back to after they leave Narrowgate, then they're literally going from community to having to start over. And so for those guys, start over. I liken community to safe friends I use this example in my office all the time. It's like the stock market. You have to diversify. If you put all of your stock in one company and it goes belly up, you're broke. But if you diversify and this one company out of 10 that you've invested in goes belly up, the other 9 might be rocking and thriving, and you could be just doing great. It didn't even touch you when that one went belly up. If I put all of my energy into just one friend and then they move, or I have to move, or they die, God forbid. Yeah. Now I have to start all over again. So I always say have 2 or 3, and that takes time to build. If you have no community, start working on it. It takes a couple of years, but get 2, 3, 4 safe guys. And then we have other friends too. They don't know everything about us, right? But we can get needs met. And then if somebody has to move or leave, you still have community. You're not destitute. So that would be huge. Why guys sometimes come back to me and they're like, why am I acting out again in all these really unhealthy ways? Community, go get your needs met, and we're built for community. Even God has the Trinity, is what I like to say. Even God has himself.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And Jesus had his 12 and his inner 3. And according to John, he had his best friend, John, right? And he emoted in front of them. He asked them, could you watch over me this last night? They didn't know it was his last night. Yeah. But he said, can you watch over me? And he woke them up 3 times. That's neat. He needed them. So that's what I would, that's my going out pitch right there.
Man.
That is also probably what I would say, just not nearly as eloquent or as impactful.
Well, I say it about 20 times a week.
It's important.
For the last 15 years. So
well, Thaddeus, man, you're awesome.
Thank you.
All that you do for Narrowgate and for everybody else, and you're truly a gem, and the world would be a darker place without you. So thank you for spending time with us and letting us get a little bit of our, healthy, safe men needs met as well. And yeah, it's just been a good conversation.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, this has been great.